What's up guys, welcome back to Deck Tech for Decks. I'm your host Caleb and we are back with another Hashaton Scarabs Fist deck list. But before we get into it, if you guys want a free $15, you can click on that whatnot link in the description down below. It helps out the channel, you guys get free money. Additionally, always liking, commenting, and subscribing really helps me out. Now today we're going to focus on Hashaton, and this is going to specifically be a pub stomp archenemy deck because honestly that's what people are going to be expecting whenever you're playing against them. So you really want to be able to defend yourself against people trying to target you like crazy. Right out of the gate, if people are playing Hashaton, it is going to be a 3 versus 1 scenario, so you need to be able to kill all 3 players with this commander, and that's what this deck is aiming to do. We want to win fast, we want to give them threat after threat, and we want to put them on the back foot and win quickly. If they're able to rebuild and they're able to keep our commander off the board, they can beat this deck, but make no mistake, this is archenemy, we're trying to win, and Hashaton is the commander that can do that. Hashaton has very easily placed himself at the Corvul, Devosia, the Kalia level. Right out of the gate, he's going to get targeted, and he deserves to be targeted because this guy is super strong. Now, if you guys were hoping for a budget list, or I see a lot of people asking for a lures list, hope is not lost. If you guys like this video and comment that you want another budget list, you want to see another Hashaton lures list, comment down below. Let me know the demand's still there, and if it is, I will build yet another Hashaton deck list. But for now, let's get right into the video. Let's start this video off on a super salty note and talk about Void Winnower. Everybody absolutely hates this card if people don't have their Swords to Plowshares in hand. This guy sticks onto the battlefield for an unreasonable amount of time, and everybody talks about how they could win the game if they could just cast their spells. Well, it turns out this guy makes it to where you just flat out can't cast your spells. Continuing on with the salt, we have Jin-Gitaxi's Core Augur. I really like this guy because not only does he give you a fresh new grip and more cards to discard because you have more than 7 cards in your hand now, additionally, he's just going to make all of our opponents discard their entire hands. It turns out it's really easy to win a game of archenemy whenever your opponents don't have any spells to cast. Wandering Archaic, I like this guy. He's going to steal all of our opponents' ramp, all of our opponents' removal. People are not going to pay the 2 for this. We're just going to get double the value off of any spell that our opponents cast that's an instant or sorcery. Elesh Norn is also going to be super solid here. I don't want to die out of nowhere to these go wide strategies, so just throwing this on the battlefield will allow us to keep all of those small creatures off the battlefield, and we get to just smash face with our big beaters. Toxrill the Corrosive, again, we're kind of being toxic, we're kind of being salty, we're playing archenemy here. So this guy just gets rid of all of our opponent's creatures. We get to create a board state and sacrifice that board state to draw cards. Valgavoth Terror Eater. Now we're hating on the graveyard decks as well. This guy's absolutely insane. If a card you didn't control would be put into an opponent's graveyard from anywhere, exile it instead, and then during your turn, you may play cards exiled with Valgavoth if you cast them, pay life instead of mana. This is extremely powerful. We are running a few wheel effects in this deck, so just wheeling everybody's hand away, and we get all of their cards to cast for basically free. We have to pay life, but again, basically free, it's going to be pretty broken. Archon of Cruelty is going to be pretty rough for our opponents as well. Whenever it attacks or enters the battlefield, our opponents are going to have to sacrifice a creature or planeswalker, discard a card, lose 3 life, and then we get to draw a card and gain 3 life. Jin-Gitaxi's is going to be pretty hard for our opponents to play around. It counters the first instant, sorcery, or artifact spell they cast that turn. So that's going to make it to where they have to cast something meaningless and then something meaningful. Very hard to deal with, very annoying to deal with, especially if you have a removal spell. You have to have another spell on top of that removal spell to actually even get that removal spell off. Additionally, it's going to double up on our artifacts, instant, and sorcery spells. That's pretty cool as well. Sheoldred the Whispering One seemed like a no-brainer. Now we're able to discard our giant creatures and then reanimate them on the upkeep, basically giving us 2 copies. Now be careful with the legend rule. We are running Sakashima to kind of get rid of that a little bit, but again, we have a ton of non-legendary creatures that we would love to create a token copy of and then instantly reanimate. Archfiend of Despair being one of them. This guy says at the beginning of each end step, each opponent loses life equal to the life that player lost this turn. Notably, the way it's worded, it works for our opponents as well. If player B attacks player A, deals 10 damage, this guy triggers and makes it to where that player takes 20 damage instead. I don't think that's going to be happening. I think we're going to be the problem here, especially when they see this card. But also, let's not forget that our commander can be activated at instant speed. So maybe we wait till one of our opponents takes a ton of damage, and then at instant speed, we discard this guy, create a token copy, and that player's dead now. There's a lot of funny things we can do here. Avacyn, Angel of Hope. Why don't we just make all of our permanents indestructible? That way our opponents can't interact with us at all. Bone Miser's also pretty good here. This is going to work amazingly with our discard outlets. He's going to create a 2/2 black zombie, generate 2 black mana, or draw us a card depending on what we're discarding. Nezahal Primal Tide. Not only is this basically a Rhystic Study that sticks on the battlefield, it's also a 7/7 dinosaur. It's a 4/4 if we reanimate it or turn it into that zombie token, but still very useful here. Additionally, it can be a discard outlet. It has an ability where we discard 3 cards, we exile Primal Tide, and return it to the battlefield at instep. Notably, won't work for the token version, but if we reanimate this guy, it's going to work just fine. Con Sphinx. I like this just for insane card advantage. Now we're drawing 2 cards whenever our opponents draw 1. Ancient Silver Dragon. Again, the card advantage here is absolutely insane. Archfiend of Ifnir is going to be very good with our discard outlets because we can just discard anything at instant speed to just snipe away our opponent's entire board. Aethon Soldier. I like this here because it gets rid of the legendary rule. And there's a lot of creatures in this list that multiple of them is just going to be really hard for our opponents to deal with. Like multiple Elishnorns, for instance. If we get 3 of them on the battlefield and we have the original one as well, that's going to be +8 power for all of our creatures and -8 power for all of our opponents. So this guy plus Elishnorn is kind of a creature lock, allowing them not to play the game with any creatures. Emiria Shepherd has a really cool interaction with Wanderscape Sage. Not only is Sage an amazing discard outlet, but we're able to return a land card from our hand. This means whenever a land enters the battlefield and triggers Emiria Shepherd, it's going to be a plains pretty consistently, allowing us to just flat out reanimate a creature. But let's be honest, even if we're not reanimating the creature, it's still pretty useful to return it back to our hand and discard it again using Hashaton's ability and make another token copy of a broken creature. Being able to discard Archon of Cruelty several times a turn seems very good here, just creating more and more token copies of it. Even things like Archfiend of Despair, really busted. Last but not least, I want to talk about Exquisite Angel. This can kind of put a soft lock on the entire game whenever we pair it with Emiria Shepherd. What's going to happen here is we discard our Exquisite Angel, then we're going to make a token copy of it using our commander. Now at any point, we can exile that zombie token to not lose the game and make our life total become 40. Kind of crazy. This means as long as we have a way to keep returning Exquisite Angel to our hand and keep discarding it, triggering our commander and making a token copy of a zombie with Exquisite Angel's ability, if you would lose the game, instead exile Exquisite Angel and your life total becomes equal to your starting life total. This means indefinitely, as long as we keep one of those zombie tokens on the battlefield, we kind of just can't lose the game. Moving on, let's talk about our discard outlets, because we do need to be able to discard these massive creatures to bring a token copy of them onto the battlefield. Putrid Imp, Tireless Tribe, very boring, but they come down turn 1, our commander comes down turn 2, and then turn 3, we're cheating something massive into play. That's exactly where this deck wants to be. Oblivion Crown, Psychic Frog, Ghostly Pilferer, all very good instant speed discard outlets that just do exactly what we need them to do and give us a little bit of added benefit. Scourge Familiar is kind of awkward because this is probably something you want to discard to cheaply get a 3 mana version of it, but it does give us the ability to discard a card and add a black mana to our mana pool, and that's just super useful in a deck with all of these massive creatures. I kind of want to be able to generate a lot of mana, that way we can hardcast some of them if we need to in a pinch. Likeness Looter, Vohar, Merfolk Looter, Kista, Rona, all very useful looters that have a little bit of added utility. You won't use the added utility all the time, but you'll be surprised how often that comes in handy. Especially Kista and Likeness Looter here. Likeness Looter can just straight up be a copy of any creature in our graveyard if we pay enough mana. That's super busted. And then Kista is kind of a little bit unique here. We do have to get that prowess up to get the ability to copy target instant sorcery spell, but what you could do in a pinch is actually discard Guard Kista, create that token copy of it using our commander, and now it has 4 power, and we can activate her ability whenever we want now. Overlord of the Flood Pits, this guy can be reanimated very easily with our commander, but also just hard casting it for 5 mana is not terrible, and then we get a solid way to draw 2 cards and discard a card every single combat step. Shirakai Genesis Engine, not only does this allow us to draw 2 cards and discard a card, but it also creates a little bit of a board state. Having chump blockers, very notable in a deck that is just trying to be the meanest at the table. Wanderscape Sage, again, a discard outlet, pairs really well with some of our other cards in the deck. Ledger Shredder is kind of just okay here because we don't get to choose when we discard the card, but honestly, it does come in handy. Maybe we hold open 3 mana, we wait for someone to trigger Ledger Shredder, and then we're cheating in a Jin Kataxis and they have no hand anymore. Pretty useful stuff. Unctus is gonna give us the ability to loot with any creature. Now, all we have to do is turn it into a blue creature, attack with that blue creature, and we're drawing and discarding a card. Rafine Scheming Seer, same thing here. All we have to do is attack with our board state, our board's going to get a little bit bigger, and we're going to get to draw and discard some cards. Tortured Existence, very cool card in this deck. What we're going to do is we're going to actually be able to loop cards in and out of our graveyard. This is where Scourge Familiar and Bone Miser become extremely powerful because we're actually able to discard land cards to generate mana, and then we're able to loop things like Aethon Soldier. He becomes a copy of the most broken thing on the battlefield. All we have to do is either do that on end step or just wait a rotation. Once all our Aethon Soldiers untap, we're attacking for the win most likely. Frantic Search, also a pretty cool one here. We just get to draw and discard a couple cards, and then we get to untap 3 lands, so it gives us the mana we need to activate our commander and the discard outlet at the same time. Just neat tech. Last but not least, we're going to throw in a couple cards to protect our commander, and we're going to throw in some reanimation cards. That way, if our commander does get removed, we can easily just start reanimating those creatures, discarding them with our discard outlets, casting our reanimate spells. Super efficient. Cheating stuff into play is really broken, and this deck is broken as well. Don't forget to like and comment if you guys want me to build even more Hashaton decks. I think he's going to be gross. I think we're going to get hated off the table, and that's why I made this deck so mean. Didn't include any tutors, didn't include any combos. It's just dropping mean creatures, and eventually you're going to overwhelm your opponents and win the game. Praetor, Excessum, Chicken Salad, The Professional Heal, and Irrelevant, you guys are amazing. I hope this helped you guys in your deck building endeavors, and I'll see you in the next one.